Hello. My name is Ash. I'm the founder of the Unicorn Staffing Agency, and today I'm here to teach you what it is that you need to know if you are considering hiring your first, second, or third team member. This is a lecture specifically designed for people in small businesses who are seeking to hire staff and are struggling with the challenges of hiring those first few team members. So if you are someone who feels like you're working too hard on the admin or the customer support or the marketing, the tasks that you really know that aren't your genius and that you shouldn't be doing, then this lecture will be really helpful for you. Particularly if you're someone who feels like you could be saving time if you were to outsource, someone who might feel a little bit intimidated or stuck around the hiring. And if you're someone who wants to do it the right way, if you're concerned about wasting time and energy, that you want to save time, but you don't want to invest too much time, if you're someone who wants to really look after your customer experience when you bring someone onto your team, and if you're someone who wants to grow your business, but you want to do it sustainably, you don't want to be working 1,000,000 hours a week in order to serve more clients, then if this is you, if this is what you're looking for, then this is definitely the place to be. You're going to learn some really helpful stuff here. Before I dive into the teachings, I want to explain to you why you would even consider listening to me. You might not know me. You might have heard of me already. I might be a completely new face. So I'm going to share a little bit about my history. I've been spending well over 10 years hiring staff for small businesses, especially therapists, coaches, facilitators, consultants, schools, online businesses that teach and inspire and shift culture. And I've worked with lots of other types of businesses as well, but mostly small businesses that have small, high-performing teams. I've hired literally hundreds of staff across every domain of business, and I've built entire teams from the ground up, starting with just a founder to a small, high-performing team that can generate hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year with just one or two or three or four people. So I've worked with a lot of people in the industry. If you're curious to read my testimonials, I've put a few of them here. So if you're interested to learn more about my work, you can read that. I'm not going to go through the testimonials. You can pause this lecture if you want to learn more. Cool. So now that that is out of the way, let's talk about what specific questions I'm going to be answering. And these are the questions that I receive from people in your situation every single week. These are the most common questions, and this is why I'm choosing to answer them. And by answering these questions, I'm going to give you a pretty decent roadmap for hiring or for receiving the support that you need in order to hire. The first question is it the right time for me to hire? When do I know that it's time to wait versus when it's time to hire? Second question, what should I delegate or hand over? And what should I not delegate? Third question, how do I find someone who's actually a good fit for me and my unique circumstances? Fourth question, how do I hire without creating stacks of work for me? I want to make it less work, not more work. Fifth question, what do I do if they mess up and disappoint my customers? How do I protect the reputation of my business when I'm bringing someone that I don't know into my business? And lastly, sometimes I have lots to delegate, and at other times I have very little. How do I find someone who's going to want to work with me even though the volume of work is up and down? These are the most common things that I get asked. So let's start with question number one. Is it the right time for me to hire? The key indicators that I find are the most useful benchmarks that suggest that it's time for people to hire are, firstly, you're hitting a business growth limit. And I'll unpack that concept for you, a business growth limit. We can think of a business like a pipeline. Your customers discover you through word of mouth or through your marketing. They flow into the next stage of the pipeline, which is sales. They go to your sales page or your sales call. They flow through that stage, and then they enter into service delivery or product delivery. and they receive the thing that you're offering. This is the basic stages of the pipeline. And then we have all these peripheral services like admin and customer support and marketing and legal, and they support the pipeline to do what it needs to do. It's good to divide the business up into these categories, because if you have a significant block in any one category, it can actually block the whole business from growing. For example, if you have a block in marketing, that means people aren't going into sales calls and you're not getting new customers. That's a huge block for the business. Or if you have a block in sales, maybe you have a lot of people coming to you, but they're not converting into customers, and therefore you're not serving as many people as you could have. Or maybe you've solved the marketing and sales problems, but you don't have the time or the capacity to deliver your services, and so your business is plateauing. Or maybe all three of these are working really well, but there are blocks in your peripheral services, like your admin's a mess, you're bogged down by IT work. There's something that's preventing the whole business from growing. If you're hitting a business growth limit, then you have a decision to make. Am I going to learn all these new skills and do it myself, or am I going to hire someone else? You can learn the new skills, but that's going to take even more of your time. And if you're already busy, eventually you have to start handing things over to other people in order for the natural growth of the business to be unblocked and flow through. So if you're hitting a business growth limit, that's an indicator. Second indicator, you're doing repeatable tasks at least 3 hours a week. If you're doing 3 hours a week on tasks that are repetitive, you can probably be outsourcing those tasks, reclaiming those 3 hours back, and then either just doing more of what you love, spending time with family, spending time on your hobbies, spending time in nature, or reinvesting that time into the business so that it can flourish, working on the business rather than in the business. Third indicator, you're turning down opportunities. That means that people are reaching out to you and they want to work with you, but you don't have the time to work with them. Or you know there's a bunch of people out there in a specific location, but you don't have the time to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm available. This is a strong indicator. And lastly, the fourth indicator is that you're overworking. You're doing too much work. You don't have enough time to rest or do the things that you love. If you're experiencing any one of these, then it is a suggestion that it is a time to hire. Now, in order to hire, you also need a few things. Firstly, you need cash. You need to be able to invest in your team. If you don't have capital or cash flow, then obviously you can't hire. If you have some capital, you want to be thinking about, well, what's it going to cost for me to hire out? Let's take an example. Let's say you've got a block in marketing and you want to create more marketing materials to get more people into sales calls and more clients. What would it cost? Maybe it's going to cost 5 hours a week, and maybe the person that you're going to hire, you might be able to find an offshore content creator for, say, $15 an hour. So that's $75 a week. And if we multiply that across a year, that comes to something like, let's say, a couple of $1,000s across a year. I don't know the exact maths. But if you were to invest in that marketing, you'd get more clients and you'd be making significantly more than $1,000. So it's a worthwhile investment. So do you have that couple of $1,000s sitting in your bank account, or do you have excess cash flow that can be reinvested into the business to grow the business cash flow? That's an important question to ask yourself. And lastly, if you know that you are hitting these indicators and you have the cash, the last question is it time to grow? There are times in life where it's time to just settle and do what you've already been doing, and there's times to grow. And we can track this by questioning, how important is growth? What is it going to give me? How is it going to improve my life? And do I have the emotional capacity to grow? So check in. If you've got the emotional capacity and that growth is going to make meaningful impact in your life, then I would say go for it. It's time to hire. Now, if you're still unsure if this advice on this question is too broad, you can get some help. You can talk to me and I'd be happy to have a very straight, honest conversation with you about whether it's time for you to hire or not. And I can help you figure that out. And I think now is worth letting you know, because it's going to come up in a few of these slides. You don't have to do the hiring alone. I have an agency. I will set up a call with you. We'll work out what kind of staff you need. Do you have the cash flow? Are you ready to grow? We can work that stuff out together. And if we decide that it's a yes, then I would hire someone for you from scratch. I would assist you in the onboarding and the management of that person. I provide a very robust, well-rounded service to take all the friction and the stress out of hiring. So know that you don't have to do it yourself if you don't want to. And the thing that my agency promises is that we promise very high quality VAs that are usually offshore. We have some Australian staff, but we have a lot of staff who's offshore who we charge somewhere between $15 to $20 an hour Australian or $10 to $15 an hour US, who are like incredibly talented and dedicated, similar to someone in the US or Australia. Now, I'll go later into when it's time to offshore outsource and when it's time to hire a local. We'll get back to that later. But I just want you to know at this point, you don't, if you're still asking the questions at the end of this lecture, know that you don't have to do it alone. Happy to have a free call with you to work out if it's time to hire. What should I delegate and what should I not delegate? So, what I recommend delegating first is tasks that are low skill, high frequency, and repeatable. These are the tasks that you're doing every day. You probably don't notice a lot of them, but all up they accumulate, and then you don't have the time to do the really important business growth and the edgy growthful activities, because you're spending all your day doing admin or customer support or content creation or something like that. These are great things to outsource. They're high frequency and repeatable, which means that you can save a lot of time by outsourcing them, and they're relatively low skill. You don't need a 5-year degree to do admin or customer support. You need to be a good communicator who's good with detail, but those people are all around you. So these are the things that will reclaim a huge amount of your time, but have a very low degree of risk associated with them. The next thing I recommend delegating first are energy drainers. These are the things that zap your energy, that you're dreading, that you're dragging your feet around. And the reason why I recommend delegating these things is because you really, as the service provider and the leader of your business, should be doing the things that you are most passionate about, the things that light you up, the things that excite you, the things that you were put on this earth to do. When you do these energy draining things, firstly, you're probably not the best at them. Or if you are, you might be cutting corners a little bit to just get it done. If you were to hire someone who's really passionate about those things, and there are people who are passionate about tech setup and customer support and admin and bookkeeping, they do exist, trust me. If you were to give it to someone like that, they might even do a better job than you. And with all that extra energy that you aren't spending on these low priority tasks, you can be pouring that into your business, giving your gifts to the world. So I find when people outsource energy drainers, they see a big, quick surge in improvement of their personal experience and their capacity to grow their business to the level that they really want. So the next thing, energy drainers. And lastly, as I said, when you're hitting a business growth block, it's a good time to bring someone in. For example, if you know you need to start posting on social media, that's a great time to bring someone in. Now, there are some things that I would caution you against delegating until your business is at a really good level of maturity. The first one is product design. No matter who you hire, if you are a specialist in your gift and your audience, you're going to know your audience better than anyone else who you bring in. And so the best person to make decisions about your products and your services is you. You don't want to be abdicating that. When I say abdicating, what I mean is giving it to someone and just trusting them to make the choices. That doesn't mean you can't bring in a consultant who can advise you. In fact, I would encourage that. If you're new to marketing and product design, it's good to get guidance on those things. That's something I offer for my clients. But ultimately, you need to embrace the responsibility to be the expert in the people that you serve. And that's why they're going to go to you and not someone else. And so ultimately, the decision needs to be yours about what products you create. Okay, next one is marketing strategy, fundamental marketing strategy. These are questions like, who specifically are you serving? Who's your target audience? What do you know about what they need and what they're looking for and the problems they're experiencing? What is your messaging? How are you positioning yourself as an expert in your space? You can't just phone it in. Trust me, I've tried, because no specialist is going to know your audience better than you. So I highly recommend getting clear about, what do you stand for? How do you differentiate yourself from other people in your market? To get clear on that. And again, you can get guidance, you can get advice, but ultimately these decisions need to be your own. And lastly, I recommend a lot of caution when outsourcing copywriting. Simply because it's going to be very hard for someone else to get your tone. I usually suggest new business owners get good at writing copy for your audience. Find out the messaging that is going to land for your audience before you outsource it, so that you already have a certain amount of competence in that. And that way, when you outsource your copywriting, you're going to know whether the copywriter is doing a good job or not. So those are the things I tend to encourage business owners to delegate last, not first. Now, these tasks here are the most commonly outsourced tasks from my clients and also all the businesses I've served over the past decade. These tend to be the first things that people outsource because they are things that are, as I said, where is it? Here. Low skill, high frequency, repeatable tasks, and energy drainers. First one's customer support. You can find offshore staff who are excellent at communicating and responding to emails. Administration tasks, bookkeeping, social media content creation, and video editing. These are the most common ones, and they are for good reasons. Now, what I notice when people do outsource these tasks, what happens is the business owner saves time and creative energy, and then they have extra hours in the week to either serve more clients or to think creatively about taking their business to the next step of maturity, which means that they can serve more clients in less time, earn more money, and have a bigger impact. And also, what I find is that when they do that, the quality of the experience of running a business improves. Things get more relaxed, things get more easeful and graceful for the business owners. How do I find someone who's actually a good fit for me? I have hired, hundreds, maybe thousands of people. I've fired so many. I've noticed the common trends in what doesn't work and what does work. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how to find the person who's actually a good fit. The first thing is we want to avoid cheap freelancers. The bottom of the barrel, cheapest possible option. When you hire these people, they're the cheapest for a reason. It's because they're finding it hard to find work. The reason why they're finding it hard is because they don't have the technical skills or the track record of the experience. That basically they're low skill. And so you feel good about it at the start because you feel like you're saving money. But then after 2 or 3 months, there are so many headaches involved in working with them that you kind of regret it and you end up hiring someone more expensive. So take it from me. I know it's tempting, but you will save time, energy, and money, because time and energy are money, if you go that level up and invest in quality. Secondly, I would discourage you from hiring friends in your business. The reason why I advise against that is because it is tempting to hire friends. Because when you hire friends, you don't have to go outside of your social circle. They're right there, they're right in front of you, the devil you know rather than the devil you don't. I get it's a really appealing idea in the beginning. However, what usually happens is because you have a friendship to maintain, you can't bring the level of directness and honesty and high standards because you don't want to risk compromising the friendship. Or it just becomes harder to give critical feedback, essentially, harder to fire them. I've personally been in situations where I've hired friends, they haven't delivered the standard that I need, and I've compromised and the business has suffered. Or I've realized they're actually not a good fit for the job and I've dilly-dallied around letting them go and delayed finding the right person for the job. When you hire someone who's not a friend, who's purely a staff member, a team member, you can be very clear with them. This is what we need. This is the standard. This is the quality that we need. And if it's less than that and it can't be improved, then we're going to need to let you go to find someone who's genuinely inspired to meet the standards of the business. It's quite hard to have that conversation with a friend. It can still be challenging to have it with another person, but it's a lot easier. So ultimately, when you hire people who aren't your friends, the business thrives much more. That doesn't mean you can't become friendly and warm and kind and compassionate with your staff, but it is a different kind of relationship. They need to deliver results. That's very important for the business. So that's what I suggest to avoid. Now, the things that I look for when I hire someone are three things: character, competence, and commitment. Character is about their character qualities, what kind of person they are. Competence is that they have the non-negotiable technical skills, that they can do the work from the beginning. And thirdly, commitment. Commitment is about genuinely being on board for doing the things that the role requires. So I'll break down these in a little bit more detail, and then I'll talk to you also about how I hire for those things. The way that I hire for character, actually the way that I hire for all of these things is I will put out an application form with questions that are designed to reveal people's character, competence, and commitment. Then once I've got the applications, I will narrow it down to a short list of maybe 5 to 10 people. And those people, I will give a work test. I will give them tests of like typical tasks that the role involves. And I will assess their work. This really reveals their competence. And lastly, I will interview them. And I'll double check their character, their competence, and their commitment by asking probing and specific questions about the results that they've achieved, about how they deal with certain scenarios, and are they actually on board for the parts of the role that I sense people might not be on board for. I'll double check all of it. So application, work tests, interviews. And then I'll put them on a 3-month trial period. I want to give them a realistic expectation that they are still being assessed to make sure that that they actually are a good fit for the role. And I'll keep the shortlist of the people who I didn't hire in case that person isn't a fit, so that I've got a backup and I'm not beholden to that person. So I think that speaks to what to screen for. These are the things that we need. So if you are hiring for a role, think about what are the character qualities that this role needs. Do they need, if it's an admin role, they need to be very good with detail. They need to be very diligent, and they need to be very proactive in responding quickly to inquiries. That's an example of character. So for admin, it would be detail, orientation, diligence, and quick responsiveness. Competence. Competence is about non-negotiable technical skills. The way that I assess these is that I will look at a person's past work. For example, if they're a graphic designer, the first thing that I'll look for is their graphic design portfolio. And I'll check whether their designs are of the level of quality that I need in my business. And lastly, commitment. Commitment can be assessed in the application form. You can say, this role requires X. Are you on board for that? And it can be double checked in the interview as well. Often, I think the main things that are often important around commitment are making sure that mistakes aren't made, like double checking, triple checking work to make sure the quality's there. And the quality of communication is really important. This is something I think people forget. You can say explicitly in the hiring process, I need you to respond to every inquiry within 24 hours on a business day. I need you to work these hours per day. You can get really clear about exactly what you want from their commitments, and then just be really upfront. Just say, this is what I need. Are you on board for that or not? So that's what I screened for. Let's move on. I want to talk about when to hire a local versus when to hire offshore. This is a really common question that I get. Who do I hire? The difference between local and offshore staff. So just to clarify, when I say local staff, I'm the audience that I'm speaking to, my clients are typically Australian, American, New Zealand, UK, English speaking countries. And they're hiring offshore staff, usually from the Philippines or Indonesia or India or South America or South Africa, because those people offshore can charge a lot less and still have a very high quality of life. And so if you're early in your business journey, you might not be able to afford a local staff member, but you can afford a virtual assistant. For example, a video editor in Australia might cost somewhere between $60 and $100, whereas I've found video editors with the same level of skill and professionalism from the Philippines, and they bill out at $20 an hour. So it's literally costing 1/3, but getting the same level of quality. So anyway, I'm getting a bit off track. Let's talk about when to hire local. The advantage of hiring local people is that they have a cultural understanding, a nuanced cultural understanding of you and your business and your target audience that offshore staff often don't have because they haven't grown up in the same country as you. And those nuanced cultural understandings are particularly important for certain kinds of work. Specifically, strategy, leadership, and management. These are the quite complex things that require that degree of nuance. Also, sensitive content and language. If you're a trauma-informed therapist and you're communicating with clients about trauma-sensitive content, you probably want to hire a local person who has experience working with trauma. You wouldn't want to just outsource that to anyone because it's very sensitive. And similarly with copywriting, if you're writing copy for your website or your sales page, you'd want to get someone who hopefully is a native English speaker, because they're going to get the nuances of the language. Copywriting is highly nuanced. Conversely, the good thing about hiring offshore is that you can save a lot of money, and you can also open up hiring pathways that you couldn't have afforded if you were only hiring local. So it enables the business to grow. It opens up new possibilities for growth, especially for repeatable tasks, as I said earlier. And interestingly, I find I've hired Australians to do certain repeatable tasks, and then I've hired Indonesians and Filipinos and South Africans to do those same tasks. And I find that the offshore staff often do a better job. The reason why is because I've found that Australians have a desire for more creative and challenging work. Whereas Filipinos, for example, there's a humility and a patience, and they're just willing to get big chunks of work done in a way that I've found is more challenging for Australians. Now, of course, these are cultural generalizations. There's going to be exceptions to every rule. And I only hire the top 1% of the people that apply for every role. So there's all going to be exceptions, but these are the generalizations I've found over many, many years of hiring experience. The last thing that I think is really helpful to hire offshore is really time-consuming tasks. Just so you don't break the bank, so you can get that stuff done and still have profit at the end of the month. And lastly, if you are thinking of hiring, but you just don't want to learn the skill, I want to encourage you that you don't have to do it alone. You can hire me or someone like me to help you with that process. Let's move on to the next question. How do I hire without creating more work for me? Now, this is a really common one that I get. People want to delegate. They know they need to delegate to free up their time, but delegating takes time. It takes time to get to know someone and to train them in your process and to find the right person. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to speed up that process, how to make it as quick as possible. And before I do that, I want to explain the economics, the math of hiring. Realistically, when you hire someone, in the first week, you're going to spend time onboarding. It might only take half an hour. It might take 3 hours. It depends on the role that you're onboarding for. It might take longer than that. Then, over the next couple of weeks, you're going to continue to onboard, but you're also starting to save time, and it's starting to even out. The amount of stuff that you've handed over, the time that you've saved from that is the same as or better than the time that you've spent onboarding. Then after that third week, by the end of the month, you're saving way more time than you're spending delegating. So from the like pre-hiring perspective, you've got this onboarding in front of you and you're like, wow, this is going to take a long time. But from the perspective of a month later, suddenly you've freed up 5-10 hours a week of your time, 20 hours a week, depending on how much you're hiring for. You've saved up a big chunk, and that chunk keeps applying week after week after week. And you look back on those first few weeks and you think, wow, that was totally worth it. So I highly recommend finding a moment in the life cycle of your business where you can carve out a bit of time to allocate time specifically just for onboarding, because the savings are so much better than the cost of hiring, especially when you do it the right way from the beginning. Now, let's talk about how to save time when hiring. The first thing is, don't hire someone who has zero experience. Hire someone who has experience working in your industry, doing the work that you need to outsource for, because they already know a lot about what needs to be done, and they'll know things about what needs to be done that you hadn't even considered. They're going to help you make life a lot easier. So hire people with experience. Secondly, cover all the practical stuff in one session. I have a checklist of everything to cover when you're onboarding a staff member, which I'm going to share with this teaching, and just get ready, like get through all that stuff. The reason why I recommend getting it all done in the first week is because if you don't, the staff member is going to hit friction in future weeks, and it's going to prevent them from working, and you're probably going to need to stop what you're doing and unblock them, which can be a bit of a hassle. So if you just dedicate a block of time right at the start to get all that done, then that staff member is free to take action, and you're not going to be needing to worry about them as much in the coming weeks. Third one is staged handover. Start by giving them really easy stuff. Let them show you that they can do it. Let them prove to you that they've got the skill. Then move into the more complex stuff, and then move into the really challenging stuff. Like piece it out by level of challenge. Because when they're doing the easy stuff, they're going to learn your style. They're going to learn how you work and how you like to be worked with. And that's going to make the more complex stuff a lot easier to pick up later down the track. Third one, weekly check-in meetings. I'm a big fan of weekly check-in meetings. The reason why is because I find sometimes with staff, they're constantly messaging me and I'm having to take time out of my day to answer their questions, which scatters me. So with staff, what I'll typically say is anything that's urgent, message me and I'll unblock you. But anything that can wait, bring to a team meeting. And then I'm in that team meeting, I'm fully focused, I'm fully present, I'm fully available, I'm getting through all of their questions in one hit. And then I can end that meeting, put that aspect of the work outside of my head and fully focus on the thing that's right in front of me. This helps my focus, it helps my attention, it makes me less drained at the end of the day. And lastly, let them take the lead in their area of mastery. When I first started hiring, I would micromanage, essentially. I'd be spelling out every task in such extraordinary amounts of detail that no one could possibly make a mistake. But I was spending so much time delegating that it was annoying. And then I started easing up on my documentation and going a little bit lighter, matching the level of documentation to the staff member and giving them an opportunity to surprise me. Let's see if I can spend 15 minutes delegating a task rather than an hour and see how they go. And maybe they make a couple of mistakes, but it's only going to take me 10 minutes to teach them not to make those mistakes. And then I spent 15 minutes and then 10 minutes, so less than half an hour, instead of spending a whole hour right at the beginning. Give them the opportunity to show their skill. You don't need to hold their hand so tightly right from the beginning. Cool. Okay, so those are my tips on how to save time when hiring. And this is something that I help my clients with. I help them onboard to ease that transition. Let's move on to question number 5. How to ensure high standards of quality without doing everything myself. One of the biggest fears I get from clients is like, what if they mess it up? What if I have to clean it up? What if they upset a client? What do we do about that? And this is my answer to that question. And really, it's not just about high standards of quality. It's about high standards of quality, high consistency, and high team skill. Team skill is the skill of everyone on your team, not just you. So if it's you plus a web developer, you've got all your skills plus that developer's skills. We want to maximize the skills across the whole team. What we want to minimize is risk, meaning things going wrong, the likelihood and severity of things going wrong. We want to minimize your time spent. We want to minimize complexity, and we want to minimize expenses. So when I say, how do we maintain high standards of quality without doing everything yourself? What I'm really saying is, how do we do all these things? How do we maximize quality, consistency, and team skill whilst minimizing risk, time, complexity, and expenses? I want to start with a bit of a mindset piece. You want to take relatively small risks with relatively high returns. The reality is, in business, there are risks. They can't be avoided entirely. A business without risk is probably a dead business or a very, very small contained business. As the business grows, as you take on new clients, as you make things easier for yourself, there's going to be some degree of risk. And so it's about getting clarity. We understand as we grow, there's going to be risk. And so what is my appetite for growth and what is my appetite for risk? And you want to find that sweet spot. You don't want to be taking no risks because then you can't grow. But you don't want to be taking so many risks that you get overwhelmed. So we want to find that margin of growth where it's like, ooh, this is an edge. Yeah, this is a risk. I don't know how this is going to go, but it's not overwhelming me. I feel ready. I feel ready to take this risk. And once you take that risk, on the other side of that risk, once you've learned what there is to know about that risk just gets smaller and smaller because you become more competent about growing your business. So you want to find that sweet spot where you're really going to grow. And you want to find, as I said, small risks with high returns. For example, hiring an administrator to do your, let's say, bookkeeping, right? Bookkeeping follows a repeatable formula. You can communicate that formula, they can do it. The likelihood of risk is low. If they make a mistake, your accountant will probably spot it and then fix it up. So how long does bookkeeping take? Maybe it takes half an hour every 2 weeks. So that's 25 hours in a year. By outsourcing that, you can reclaim 25 hours and the risk can probably be cleaned up in under an hour. So that's a small risk with a relatively high return. So that's the kind of thing that you want to hire for. The last mindset I want to share, and this is really, now I'm going to get into practical stuff after this, is that you want to choose the right level of management for each team member. Management is how much oversight, how much action are you doing with your staff member? How much reporting are you getting? How much checking in are you doing? How much instructions are you giving? That kind of thing. It's really about thinking about what is the least amount of management that I can do to get the most out of this team member. And people usually sit on one side of the spectrum. They're just delegating and disappearing, no management, or they're micromanaging and hand-holding and maybe even suffocating and exhausting themselves in the process. And there's this whole big, beautiful spectrum. And when you choose the right amount of management for that person and you gradually train them so they need less and less and less management, you get more quality, more consistency, and more team skill whilst having less risk and less time spent from you. Now, I'm going to talk about the levers of management. When I say management, this is what I actually mean. I mean task size, going from do this one tiny thing to do this whole project. I'm talking about detail of instructions from a single voice note to a 20-page standard operating procedure. Meeting frequency, like meeting once every day versus only meeting when you need to and maybe never. Reporting outside of meetings. Are they reporting every single time they do something, or are they just reporting when there's an emergency, if ever? And those are the things that you want to think about when you choose how much management to do for a staff member. The way that I decide is I ask myself, is this staff member a beginner, a competent staff member, or a mature staff member? A beginner has very low skill. We give them very small tasks. We give very detailed instructions. We meet with them very frequently, maybe every day or maybe once a week. And we get them to report like at least weekly, maybe every time they do a task. Now we move on to competent staff. Competent staff have a few years experience. They know what they're doing. They're trustworthy. We can give them batches of tasks. We can give simple instructions because we know that they already know what they're doing. We can meet with them maybe only once a month or never even if we don't want to. And they can report, maybe they give a monthly summary or a weekly summary of everything that's happened. Then we contrast that to mature staff. Mature staff who you trust that are mature because they've proven their maturity. You can give them entire projects and you can just say, hey, I want you to build this website. What do you need to know? And they'll ask you a few basic questions and then they'll build the website, and it's pretty close. The detail of instruction can be low because they already have heaps of knowledge. You will maybe never need to meet with them, and their reporting can be absolutely minimal. They can just reach out only when they need something from you. Now, when I hire, I typically avoid hiring beginners because there's plenty of competent staff at very reasonable prices offshore. And if it's not something that can be done offshore, I'll find a competent staff member in Australia because I find this is the sweet spot between price and skill. You're not going to be overspending on the staff, but you're also not going to need to overinvest time and energy. So you want to be looking for competent staff, or if you have significant cash flow, looking for mature staff where you can really reduce your amount of management, meaning not doing everything yourself, but you're still getting high standards of quality. Cool. That's my cheat sheet for getting the most out of your staff with the least amount of management. Now, I am going to speak to a few other pieces. I'm not going to go into detail about this because the lecture could last forever if I did that. I'm going to talk about what I find are the most powerful tools for getting even more out of your staff, even more quality and consistency, whilst doing even less active management. The first is standard operating procedures. They are step-by-step sequences for doing repeatable things. For example, it might be every day in the morning, I want you to, like for a personal assistant, I want you to check my emails, delete the spam, unsubscribe from the spam, put all the urgent stuff in a folder, go to my Instagram, respond to my customer inquiries using the FAQs that I've given you. And if a customer needs a return, I authorize returns under this amount of money if they do it for these valid reasons. There, so I've given them a whole list of things to do, and I've refined that so I don't have to check in with them every day. I don't have to tell them what needs to be done every day, and they become very independent and they achieve a lot without me having to think about it. That's the magic of standard operating procedures. The next one is task management boards. Sometimes some people love task management boards, some people hate them. You don't have to use them. But if your tasks are getting too complicated, if you're holding too many threads at once, having a task management board like Trello or Asana is very, very helpful. Third one, getting out of the way. Whenever you notice that your staff member is having to ask you the same question again and again, just try and think about the generalization that you can give them so that they no longer need to ask you those questions anymore and they can just keep working without bothering you. For example, let's say they're saying this person wants to extend their payment plan. And you're looking at the person and their details and their situation and you're making a judgment call. Can you just make a generalization? Can you say, if they are an enthusiastic and supportive client, if they have a legitimate reason, these are legitimate reasons, then you can offer them this extended payment plan. And if they accept it, great. And if not, then come back to me. Suddenly you've saved that person needing to ask you that question again. So that's an example of how you can get out of the way. Another example of how to get out of the way is that you connect people. So if your VA is doing customer support, but then you're needing to communicate the messages to your clients, can you pair your VA with the customer on certain topics, like maybe just on payments and bookings, so that they can communicate with the customer directly and you don't have to think about that stuff? That frees up even more of your time. Okay, number 4, containing dialogue into regular meetings. I've already spoken about that, so I won't go into detail. And number 5, design it how you want it. I find that clients have expectations that they need to treat their staff like they treat their friends. It's really important to be compassionate and respectful, but your staff's job is to make your life easier, and you can ask for it exactly how you want it. You can hire someone who knows how you want it and is enthusiastic about doing it. If you've got a staff member and they're not really keen on doing it how you want it, they're probably not a fit. So we can really shape our roles around your thinking style, your communication style, and your needs. This is a really important thing that I do in the process. I find out what your needs are before we hire. And then when we hire, we make sure we find someone who really suits your needs. So know that you'll as you grow more experience in management, you'll weed out your people-pleasing tendencies and get clearer and more precise about what you need from your staff. Okay, great. Those are the superpowers that are really going to help you get the most out of your team. So let's move on. How do we ensure that there is enough work for our staff? This is the last question I'm going to answer. And I want to start with a story. This was when I was first starting to delegate and hire staff for me personally. I was a business coach and I was having 15, 20 coaching sessions a week with my clients, and every session, after the session, I would download the Zoom recording, upload it to YouTube, put it on a playlist, send the link to the client so that they had the session recording. And it was only like 5 or 10 minutes each time. I didn't really think about it. And then when I started to get really busy because the business was picking up, I realized that this was taking a hell of a lot of time. 15 to 20 meetings, 10 hours a week. That's like 2.5, 3 hours, over 3 hours of work. And it sneaks up on you. And so I found a VA and I got her to do this task for me. It's a repeatable, straightforward task. It's very accessible. And she got it right immediately. I didn't even have to correct her. And suddenly I had an extra 3 hours a week. Not only an extra 3 hours a week, but like I didn't realize how much time and energy, how much energy that was taking. I felt freed up and I felt more creative. And so I asked myself, like, what else can I delegate? And I set an alarm every 20 minutes that I was working, even when I wasn't working, even for personal tasks. And I wrote down what I was doing and I asked myself, can this be delegated? And I discovered so many things that I could delegate that I hadn't even considered. And the reason why I hadn't considered them was because I just wasn't used to delegating. I was used to doing everything myself because I hadn't had the opportunity or the invitation to delegate before. So I was living in a world where I was just unconsciously doing all these things that I could have been delegating to free up my time. So I did this process for like 3 weeks. And by the end of that 3 weeks, I had a full job description for an executive and personal assistant, at least 10 hours a week, maybe 15 hours a week of work. And I hired for that. I freed up my time. And after that point, I literally doubled my business because I had all this free time and free energy to pursue new opportunities. That was like the aha moment where I realized that the power of outsourcing and finding people to do things that I didn't need to be doing. So the reason why I share this story is because there are probably a lot of things that you can outsource that you haven't been. And it also highlights the importance of outsourcing. If you are billing out your time at $150 an hour and you can pay an administrator to do that for $10 an hour, then if you outsource an hour of work, you pay $10, but you reclaim $150. With that $150, you could buy 15 hours of someone's time. And if you bought 15 hours of someone's time, you could then have 15 hours to serve clients and you could make $2,500 worth of business. There's a really high return on investment for outsourcing a lot of these tasks. And that's really important to consider when you think about what to outsource. Okay. So I think I've covered the mindset and the return on investment of hiring. My answer to this question, how do we ensure there is enough work for staff? So you've got the things that are urgent. You've got the things that are really obvious that need to be delegated. And those things will fluctuate. There'll be lots of them, and then there'll be a little bit, and lots, and then a little bit. How do we smooth out those lumps? The reason why I suggest smoothing out the lumps is because if you just hire someone for a week when you've got a big amount of work, you have to find that person, you have to train them, you have to figure out whether you can trust them. And then the next time you've got a big volume of work, you might think, okay, I need that person again. And you call them up and they're not available. And so you've got to find someone new and you have to hire again and again and again. What I find is way more effective than that is building long-term sustainable relationships with staff. Relationships where they've gotten to know you and they care about you and they know that if you do well, they're going to do well. And if they do well, you're going to do well. Like business relationships with people where they have more of a vested interest in your success. I find they do better work, they're more loyal, they're more responsive. But in order to do that, we need to give them some degree of consistency. It's great to have a general virtual assistant who can do marketing materials and customer support that you can give 10 or 20 hours a week. It's so good for these reasons that I've just described. They become a part of your team and someone who goes along the journey with you. But in order to do that, you can't have the work be lumpy, because then you've got nothing for them to do. So the way that we overcome this is you tell them, yes, I need you to do the urgent stuff as top priority. But when you don't have urgent stuff, I've got all this other stuff for you to do when you've got free time. And how do we create all the other stuff? We do it doing what I described. Every 20 minutes, set an alarm and write down, what am I doing and can it be delegated? And just compile a list. It might take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but by the end of that list, you're going to reveal all sorts of things. And the other beautiful thing of doing this process is you start to open your eyes to what else can be delegated, and you notice all the things that you could have outsourced that you hadn't even considered. You hadn't even considered doing just because you didn't have the time. When I did this process, I realized, I want to clean up my veggie patch, which is full of weeds, and I just don't have the time. But if I was to delegate it, I could do that. And you think, I want to redo my Instagram bio. I just haven't had the time, so I haven't considered doing it. Add that to the list. I want to put out some reels. Add that to the list. I've got a whole bunch of people that I've never emailed and I've got their emails. I want to send them an invitation to work. Add that to a list. So slowly your eyes start to open to the growth opportunities, and suddenly there's plenty of things to do. So that's how I do it. That's how I ensure there's enough work for my staff. I've got my essential things and they're doing those first. And then I've got my big list of backup projects to do when there are quiet periods. Okay, so that's the answer to question 6. I hope that I have given you a lot of valuable insight with your hiring. And my hope is that I've given you the insights that will help make it easier for you to say yes to growing in your business. I hope that I've unblocked some of your concerns so that you feel free to take that next step. Now, if you want support in hiring, I am here, I am available. I have staff in my agency already working with clients who are doing excellent work. And I can also do recruitment drives from scratch. So if you feel ready to hire for yourself, I strongly encourage it. And if you want some support, please reach out to me. This is my email address and my phone number. I wish you all the best. I wish you the best of luck with your business. And thank you for taking the time. Thank you for trusting me with your time to share these insights with you. Okay, bye-bye.